excited to have you guys here with me. This is the first episode of From the Desert to Paradise. Oh my gosh, I'm excited. I know you guys are tuning in just to see, what this is about. And I appreciate your support. I appreciate everything, all the great comments, and everyone telling me that they're going to tune in. So first and foremost, I appreciate that, and I really do hope that you enjoy this episode. Okay, this episode is titled Exposed. Okay, Exposed. So episode 1, titled Exposed. The reason why I named the podcast From the Desert to Paradise is because of things that I've experienced in my life. And, just coming from places that had no growth, they weren't thriving, and they weren't fulfilling, areas of my life that weren't being nourished. And now to be in a place where I just kind of feel like, wow, is this real? I'm in paradise, so that means so much to me. And it's just not about a relationship. It's about a state of mind, just having a state of peace. Also just having a state of feeling secure. I've been through so much in my life as far as previous relationships. And I think, how I handled those relationships really come from the loss of my father. But before I get into that, I would like to say that during this podcast, any of the topics that I discuss, any of the individuals that I discuss, they are not related to my children. I'm not going to discuss anyone related to my children out of respect for our relationships and out of respect for my children. Also, I want to give a special shout out to my husband. I just truly thank him for being so supportive in this, just encouraging me and say, hey, sweetie, you do what you got to do. It's not about us. It's about the big picture, and it's about you helping other people. So I just thank him for allowing me to be free in this moment, free to discuss my past. And, he's wonderful. So I thank him for that, all that support. Let me tell you a story. At the age of 2.5 years old, I lost my father. I lost my dad. My dad was very ill, and he died in our home. Our home is in Gretna, Virginia, and he died in our home on the sofa from being very ill. I only have one memory of my dad. I was so young, and I'm just thankful for this one memory, but I only have one memory of my dad. And that memory is me rubbing his forehead while he's laying on the sofa. And I'm telling him, Daddy, it's going to be all right. Daddy, it's going to be all right. I don't know what being all right meant to me at that time, but I knew that I wanted to comfort my dad. My dad is very, very special. My dad loved me. I only have those memories, so I have to rely on the memories and the stories of my mom and other family members. The stories that they tell me help me feel connected to my father and remain connected to my father. But as a toddler, losing my father, that was very tragic and detrimental for me. Loss is always detrimental. Loss is always hard. How do you know that your child is effectively dealing with grief? I had a picture of my father that I used to keep close to me. And when I wanted to be with him or when I missed him, I would go find that picture and just curl up in a corner. And I would do that day after day after day because I missed my father. I remember how much I missed and loved him. I remember how much I cried for him. I remember how my mother would console me. Again, I just have that one memory of him being sick at this time, but I do remember how much I loved him. I do remember how much I cried for him. But it's hard for me to remember how much he loved me. I was talking to my godfather about a year ago, and my godfather told me, he said, Tashana, he said, your dad, he would be so proud of you. Your dad, he loved you so much. And he said he loved you so much so that I couldn't wait until I had my own children to show them that type of love, the type of love that he had for you. And that really just resonated with me. It really impacted me. He doesn't know this to this day, but when we ended our phone call, I just began to cry because I miss my dad so much. Just not having him in my life has truly affected me in ways that I thought I didn't even know that it was affecting me. But him giving me that information just really just touched my heart. It really just kind of broke something in me, just knowing that my father loved me that much, which my mother always told me, but it was just different coming from my godfather. And I truly thank him for telling me that. But back to being a toddler, again, I would be crying for my dad, laying in the corner, curled up, wishing that he was here, wishing I could have that connection with him. So, as I became a little older, I would like to say school age, 6 or 7, I wasn't crying as much for him, but I was praying to God, like, God, please let me see my dad. Every night in my prayers, I would say, God, please let me see my dad. God, please, please let me see my dad. God, please let me dream about my dad. And this was something that I did every night, just laying in my little bed, praying for my daddy, still yearning for that connection, but not understanding the meaning behind death. And that was just really difficult for me. And so I had great people in my life. Again, I had my godfather, I had uncles that were really great, and they were there for me. And later on, my stepfather came. But in that time, I didn't have my father in the household. My father was gone. And I think that left me with a feeling of emptiness, a feeling of abandonment, a feeling of constantly looking for some type of male validation. And that affected me in my relationships. And so it allowed me to fall in the desert some, because I was dealing with people who wasn't able to fill that void in my life, or dealing with people that wouldn't be able to love me only the way my father could love me. So I want to tell you about this guy that I was dating. This guy, he was very charming. Started off very charming, just a very nice guy. We were dating, just getting to know each other. No relationship or anything, just dating. And I made that very clear that we were just dating. And so after time progressed, I think he wanted a little bit more than I wanted to give at that time. And his insecurities began to creep up. And with his insecurities, he started becoming hostile. He started becoming easily agitated. He wanted to go through my phone. He wanted to do all these things that just weren't acceptable to me at the time because we were not in a relationship. And so, given those issues, it was one particular time that I remember vividly, which we had a few encounters before this one, and I should have known because all the bright red flags were there. All the flags were there. I should have known that I should have ended this a long time before we got to this point. What happened was we were on my street in my neighborhood, and it was dark. I lived in a newly developed neighborhood, so they were still building homes, and there was a lot of vacant lots. And my mother was visiting, and so he had become upset about something. So, he asked me to step outside so we can go somewhere. But we didn't get far out the neighborhood when he started making these accusations and becoming very agitated with me. And he took my keys and he threw my keys across a vacant lot. And I was upset. I asked him, why did he throw my keys? Why would you do that? And with the increased agitation and increase in rage, he just started to grab at me. And when he grabbed me with so much force that it popped every button on my shirt. It was just like ripping. It's just like he grabbed here and just ripped everything down. So every button popped, my bra strap popped, my pants popped, the button for my pants, everything had ripped. And I just couldn't believe it. So here I am grasping myself, grasping my clothes, like, oh my gosh. And so in the midst of all of this, I had wedge shoes on, and we all know that wedges are not our friend. Okay, wedges, you're gonna fall every time in wedges. I don't even know why I had them on, but I had some wedge shoes on, some wedges on, and I fell. I fell. That's what happens when you wear wedges. You fall. Okay, I fell in my wedges, and while I was on my back, he just continued just grabbing at me, grabbing at me, grabbing at me, pulling at me, and I just was like, what is happening here? Why is he pulling my clothes like this? I don't ever remember him physically hitting me, but he was just pulling my clothes. Like, why were you trying to expose me? Why were you trying to just pull my clothes off? And by the time all of this was over with, I realized I didn't have any clothes on. And in that moment, I just started doing whatever I needed to do to defend myself. The only thing I had on was one wet shoe that was wrapped around my ankle. And and that was just the ribbon wrapped around my ankle, okay? And so I managed, to get up, get out of that shoe and run. I ran to my house. Again, it was a neighborhood that was newly developed, so it wasn't a lot of homes. So thankfully, a lot of people weren't out, a lot of people weren't around, and it was only a few street lights. So I was able to run to my home. And remember, I didn't have my keys because he had threw them in the lot. So the only thing I could do was just run down the street about a quarter of a mile, totally naked. And I got to my door, and I just started banging on my door because my mother was in town visiting. So I was just banging on my door, and ringing my doorbell because I didn't know how far behind me he was, or where he was for even that matter. And my mother opened the door, and just the sheer look on her face let me know, like, oh my God. She was just like, Tashana, where are your clothes? Oh my gosh, Tashana, where are your clothes? Where are your clothes? And I could just see her going in a panic state, and I just immediately closed the door. My adrenaline was pumping. There I'm standing nude in front of my mother. I closed the door, locked the door. I ran upstairs, and I was told her to call the police while I was running upstairs. As I get upstairs, I put my clothes on, and I grabbed my weapon. And I had intentions of doing something that I probably shouldn't have done, but my mother was there. And I thank God for that because she didn't allow me to go back outside. And so when the police arrived, he was still in the neighborhood. He didn't leave. I guess he wanted to make sure he told his side of the story. And so I told the police what had happened, how he had threw my keys in the vacant lot, how he had ripped all my clothes off, how I had to run down the street nude and into my own home. And I wanted to press charges against him. And they said, okay. They asked me a few more questions, and they went out to talk to him. When they spoke with him and he gave his side of the story, I'm not sure exactly what he said, but they did go out and talk to him. And when they came back, they said, ma'am, we can press charges against him, but he wants to press charges against you too if you press charges against him. And I was like, what? And they said, yes, we can press charges against you too. And I said, how can you press charges against me? And they said, we can see visible scars on him. I said, if there are scars on him or marks on him, it was because I was trying to defend myself and get away from him. I even showed them my clothes, where he had ripped some of the clothes that I had gathered. And in that time, it was nothing they could do because of what they saw on him as far as the scars. And it was nothing I can do about that. And so with me being in the medical profession, I did not want to be in the court system. I did not want to have any issues with that. And so I decided not to press charges against him, and he didn't press any charges against me. How that's acceptable, I don't know, but that's what I had to do at that time. Being in that, I don't want to call it a relationship, but having dealings with that individual was very, very taunting. That whole situation affected me for a couple months afterwards. He never came back to my home, but I always had nightmares that he would be walking in my bedroom. Or I had nightmares thinking that he was going to come on my job. or be waiting for me outside. So I was afraid. I was afraid at work. I was afraid in my home. And that's not a good place. That's not a great place to be. No peace in your home, no peace at work, because you're constantly afraid. How many of you had to show up at work after being physically and mentally tormented or physically and mentally abused? We still have to show up, and that is so hurtful. Trying to push through for our children, trying to push through for the sake of ourselves. But I was able to push through. But I had to say to Shauna, you have to get control. You have to regain control over your emotions. He may have stripped you physically, but don't allow him to strip you emotionally. Stay in control of your emotions. It's very, very, very sad what we have to go through, after a traumatic event like that. And that was a place that I should have never been. That was truly a desert, okay? That was a nightmare. And I'm here to tell you that if you are experiencing anything that's not flourishing in your life, anything that's not pushing you to be greater, anything that's not pushing you at all, that's not a great place to be. It's not a great place to be. It's unhealthy. And you truly need to reconsider your status or truly reconsider your situation that you're in right now. Being in an unhealthy place and being there for a significant period of time, it has the potential to put you in a dark place. It can lead you to depression, anxiety, and other things that you just exposing yourself to. You're making yourself vulnerable to these things because of this unhappy place that you're in, this place that's not flourishing. So it's important that you figure out what paradise is for you and how to get there. Planning is key. How can you get there? What do you need to get to your paradise? What does it feel like to be in paradise for you? And for me, I had to get control of my emotions. I had to get in control because I needed to be there for my children. I had to get control because I had to be in control of my household. I couldn't allow someone to continue to just affect me even after they're gone a couple months. No, we can't do that. So I'm saying that to say this. Get control of your situation. Focus on the desert that you may be in and focus on how you can get to your paradise. This situation or this story may not resonate with everyone, but if you know someone who's in this situation or you know someone who's in a bad or unhealthy relationship, share this video with them. Comment and subscribe and let them know like, hey, there is better out there. You can do better. You can have a better quality of life if you begin to focus on yourself. Being in a desert is unhealthy. Being in a desert is setting you up for failure, lack of growth. Nothing's going to thrive, okay? So listen, I appreciate you guys tuning in. This was good for me. I hope it was good for you. I'm so thankful that I'm no longer in the desert, and I'm going to talk to you about more desert-like places based on the relationships that I've been in or based on individuals that I've dealt with. Being in the desert can be tough, but when I'm walking in paradise now, I often say if I had to go through the desert again, I would do it to be in my paradise now. Because I'm telling you, having a peace of mind, it is more than anything that you could ever ask for. Having a true relationship with God and just knowing your worth. You have to know your worth. You have to know your purpose. You have to know that you're designed, that God has designed a place of paradise for you. And you have to put the first foot forward to step into your paradise. It's waiting for you. Are you going to step towards your paradise? What does that look like for you? Again, I thank you guys for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I'm looking forward to episode number 2. That should be released the following Sunday. So I thank you guys. I hope you enjoy. Leave me a comment. Tell me your thoughts. And I really do appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thank you. Bye.